Welcome to the MangaLove channel. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to MangaLove so you won't miss any of the newest stories. Now, let's dive right into today's story. Chapter 1, Swipe Right on Trouble. Charlie Lane had never considered himself the dating app type. His friends would say he was too sincere for it, too easily flustered, too likely to overthink a single emoji. And yet, here he was on a Friday night, sitting cross-legged on his couch with takeout cartons everywhere while Nora and Dev lounged like a chaotic panel of judges. "Just do it," Nora said, nudging him with her socked foot. "It's not like you're pledging your firstborn, you're just swiping." Dev grinned. "Yeah, swipe right, get rejected, cry, repeat. It's character building." Charlie rolled his eyes, but reached for his phone anyway. "You two are terrible influences." They cheered as he opened Night Shift, the newest craze for scent-matched dating. The screen glowed blue and silver, sleek and promise-filled. "Find your scent match tonight." He hesitated. The Omegaverse algorithm didn't just rely on photos. It used recorded voice notes and scent descriptors. Pheromone-coded compatibility, they called it. "What if it pairs me with someone creepy?" he murmured, thumb hovering. "Then unmatch," Nora said. "Come on, Charlie, you've been single since before Dev started shaving." He sighed, smiled despite himself, and started the profile. Name, Charlie L. Bio, marketing coordinator. Likes, coffee, bad puns, and plants that refuse to die. Looking for, someone who texts first but listens second. Then came the scent tags. He hesitated at the long scroll. Vanilla, citrus, pine, amber. He finally picked pear and white musk. Warm, friendly, unassuming. Him in a bottle. "Perfect," Nora said. "You smell like a candle I'd buy." Charlie laughed and pressed submit. Within minutes, the app circle spun, scanning his pheromone profile and recorded laugh. He didn't expect a result so soon, but then the screen blinked. New match, HD. Dev whistled. That was fast. Someone out there's desperate. Charlie's heart thumped as he opened the chat. No photo, just a minimalistic gray avatar, and a message already waiting. "You sound like trouble." Charlie blinked. The line was simple, but something about it, confident, amused, made heat climb his neck. He typed back before he could think too hard. "Define trouble, asking for a friend." A pause. Then, "The kind that smiles while breaking all my rules." Nora gasped dramatically. "Oh, he's smooth. Or a serial killer," Dev said. Charlie ignored them, smiling into his phone. "Well," he murmured, "maybe I like rule breakers." By Monday morning, the weekend felt like a fever dream. The dating app glowed in his notifications, small pink bubbles full of laughter and late-night banter. But reality hit hard with fluorescent office lighting. Dell Creative was all glass walls and navy suits, polished and precise. Charlie liked it here, most days. The scent of coffee and paper, the hum of keyboards, it felt like purpose, until his boss walked in. Hayes Durnell was the kind of man who turned air into static. Tall, broad-shouldered, sharp-featured. His dark hair was always neat, his jaw always freshly shaved, and his scent, black tea and bergamot, lingered long after he passed. He didn't smile often. When he did, it looked like something unpracticed. "Good morning," Hayes said as he entered the conference room, tone cool but not unkind. The team straightened instinctively. Charlie did too, though he wished his heart would stop pounding. Why did proximity to this man always feel like standing too close to a live wire? Hayes clicked through slides outlining their next campaign, Celestia Tea, luxury in a sip. His voice was steady, velveted in steel. "We need intimacy," he said without losing sophistication. His gaze skimmed across the team, pausing on Charlie just long enough to make him forget how to breathe. "You'll take point on the content draft," Hayes added. "You have the right tone." "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir," Hayes said absently, turning back to the board. "Makes me feel ancient." The room chuckled. Charlie stared at his notepad, cheeks burning. The irony didn't escape him, writing about tea of all things, while his boss smelled like it. That night, Charlie lay in bed, laptop open and lamp casting soft gold. His phone buzzed. HD. Still awake? Trouble? Charlie smiled helplessly. Working on a campaign, my brain's tea-themed and fried. HD. Tea? Cute. I'm drinking some right now. Black, no sugar. You're clearly my enemy. A laughing emoji came through. HD. Then what do you do for work? Charlie. Marketing. You're in a creative field, the kind where people forget to sleep. Their rhythm was easy, honest, playful. Charlie found himself laughing softly, fingers tapping faster as hours slipped by. Then a new message appeared, a voice note. He hesitated, thumb hovering. Curiosity won. The voice that came through was deep and steady, but rich with warmth. You laugh like you're leaning against a doorframe, it said, a smile audible in every word. Half in, half out. Dangerous place to stand. Charlie's chest went tight. Something about it, tone, cadence, tickled the edge of recognition. He couldn't place it. It was absurd to even try. Still, he replayed it twice before replying with shaking fingers. You sound like you know a lot about danger. Only when it's smiling at me through a screen. Charlie buried his face in his pillow and groaned, half mortified, half giddy. Whoever this man was, he was trouble. The good kind. The next morning, Charlie was running on caffeine and adrenaline. He balanced coffee cups through the hall when Hayes turned the corner, nearly colliding with him. Careful, Hayes murmured, catching one cup before it spilled. His hand brushed Charlie's wrist, firm, cool skin against warmth. For one suspended heartbeat, their scents collided, black tea swirling into pear and musk, a soft sweetness under something sharper. Hayes froze imperceptibly, inhaled once, then stepped back. You're fine, he said, voice a shade lower than usual. Charlie blinked, heart galloping. Thanks, Mr. Durnell. Hayes gave a polite nod and moved on, unreadable as ever. But for the rest of the day, every time Charlie shifted in his chair, he swore he could still smell that faint trace of tea and something darker. That night, he curled under his blanket again, the apartment quiet except for the hum of city lights. His phone lit up with a new message. HD. Some people are cold because warmth would give them away. Charlie read it twice, thumb hesitating above the keyboard. He didn't know why, but the words hit somewhere deep. He typed, erased, typed again. Maybe some of us want to be found. 3 dots blinked, then vanished, then returned. HD. You make trouble sound like hope. Charlie stared at the screen until it blurred. He set his phone down, smiling into the dark. Across the city, in a penthouse lined with books and half-empty tea mugs, Hayes Durnell closed his phone, a small, private smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Neither of them knew that their worlds had already begun to intertwine. Their messages a thread pulling tighter between two people who had already met and didn't even know it yet. Chapter 2. The Project from Hell and Heaven. By Tuesday, the smell of anxiety in the office could have been bottled and sold. The client, Celestia Tea, had moved up their campaign launch. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to rebuild the entire brand from scratch. From mood boards to tagline to pitch deck, the conference room, dubbed the War Room by the design team, buzzed with fluorescent light and caffeine. Every wall was papered with mock-ups, color palettes, and words like intimate luxury circled and underlined until the markers bled through. Hayes Durnell stood at the head of the table, immaculate in slate gray. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms that could probably convince anyone to sign an NDA. His scent, black tea and bergamot, was calm against the nervous sweat and espresso haze in the room. Charlie tried not to fidget in his chair. His laptop blinked with half-finished drafts and a desperate plea for mercy in the subject line. The client wants emotional sophistication, Hayes said, pacing slowly. We're not selling tea, we're selling moments. Intimacy, quiet, small luxury. If we get it wrong, it'll look like a candle commercial. Laughter rippled. Charlie managed a weak smile, pretending his pulse wasn't hammering. Then Hayes turned toward him. Lane, you're interim lead on copy and concept until we bring in the external strategist. Charlie blinked. What? The room went still. Someone's pen clattered to the floor. You have the voice we need, Hayes continued, as if this weren't a bombshell. You understand tone. You can manage the interns and feed your drafts through me for sign-off. Meeting times stay consistent. Deadlines are non-negotiable. Clear? Charlie nodded automatically. Yes, crystal. Good. Hayes's gaze softened just enough to read as reassurance, though it lasted only a heartbeat. You'll do fine. The meeting moved on, but whispers bloomed the moment it ended. Charlie got promoted. Temporary. Still, Durnell chose him. Think it's because he actually talks back, or because he's cute? Charlie sank into his chair as people filed out. This was exactly what he didn't need. Attention, speculation, or the way his boss's faint approval made his stomach flutter. By lunch, the whole office had an opinion, and Charlie was hiding behind his phone at the cafe across the street. Charlie. Rough day. My boss just dropped me into creative purgatory. I think he actually enjoys watching people panic. HD. Terrifyingly perfect type. Charlie. Exactly. Perfect hair, perfect posture, probably irons his socks. HD. Perfection is just fear in a tailored suit. Charlie smiled, spoon poised midair. That's poetic. HD. I'm serious. The people who look the most in control are usually the ones trying not to break. He frowned slightly, chewing his lip. There was something behind that message. Something sad, maybe even personal. Charlie. You sound like you know him. HD. Maybe I know me. Then, before Charlie could type back, another message. HD. If we ever met, I'd ruin you with how much I'd want to touch you. The words landed like heat across his skin. He nearly dropped his phone. His cheeks went nuclear. And of course, that was when Hayes passed his table outside. Crisp suit gleaming, takeaway coffee in hand. Charlie choked on his tea. Hayes glanced over, brow faintly arched. You all right? Charlie coughed, nodded. Fine, just wrong pipe. Hayes paused a beat too long, his gaze sliding from the cup to Charlie's flushed face before giving a polite half-smile. Careful, wouldn't want you dying before the first draft. As Hayes disappeared down the sidewalk, Charlie stared after him, heartbeat rioting. The scent that lingered, black tea, faint citrus, felt too familiar. No, he thought, shaking his head. He was imagining things, totally imagining things. The next day was worse. The war room was chaos, mock-ups everywhere, deadlines breathing down their necks. Charlie hunched beside Hayes at the long table, both of them staring at the same glowing laptop screen as if divine inspiration might crawl out of it. Sip into serenity, Charlie murmured, typing. Too soft, too spa. Hayes said, leaning closer to read. Light is static. Try something sensory, less promise, more feeling. Charlie typed. Luxury in a quiet moment. Closer, Hayes murmured, but not yet right. His sleeve grazed Charlie's wrist. It shouldn't have felt like anything, but it did. The soft wool, the clean heat of his skin, the scent of bergamot unfurling like steam. Charlie's pheromones fluttered, pear and musk, warm and unguarded. For a moment, the air between them thickened, sweetened, turned to something that made the interns whisper excuses to leave the room. Charlie swallowed hard, trying to focus on the words instead of the smell of him. Hayes didn't move away. He reached for the water bottle on the table and, noticing Charlie's trembling hand, quietly slid it toward him. No comment, no teasing, just that subtle, stabilizing gesture. Thanks, Charlie said softly. Hydration is part of survival, Hayes replied dryly, but there was a small, secret curve to his lips that wasn't quite professional. Their fingers tapped against the table in sync as they worked through slogans. Every time Charlie leaned closer, Hayes' scent deepened, grounding, patient. It made it hard to remember that this was supposed to be work. That night, Charlie lay sprawled on his couch, laptop forgotten. The day had left him exhausted but wired. His phone buzzed. HD, still awake? Trouble? Charlie, barely. Work's killing me. HD, let me guess, the terrifying boss again.
Charlie, how do you always know? Because you text like someone holding their breath. Charlie laughed softly. You're insufferable, he whispered to himself, typing back.
Then what do you sound like? Seconds later, a voice note arrived. Good night, came the voice, low, intimate, almost a whisper. There was the sound of breathing, then a faint thump, thump, as if his chest brushed the mic. Sleep well, Treble. Charlie froze, his pulse tripped. The warmth that voice created. It wasn't the voice itself, but the rhythm, the calm command in it, and beneath the baritone, that same trace of him. No, he couldn't even finish the thought. He recorded a reply, words trembling, but light. You sound like you smile when you say my name. Seconds later, HD. Only yours. Charlie pressed the phone to his chest and shut his eyes. Outside, the city hummed through the windows. He drifted somewhere between nerves and longing. The next morning, the office air was tense, but different. Maybe it was Charlie's fault. Maybe it was the way Hayes' eyes flickered toward him more often than usual, brief, but too aware. They stood before the brainstorming wall, sticky notes, printed drafts, chaos in color. Charlie pitched a tagline between yawns. What if we went meta with it? Something like steeped in secrets. Too risky, Hayes, mid-sip of coffee, actually laughed. Not a huff, not a polite exhale, a real laugh. Warm, low, startled out of him. The room froze. Everyone turned like it was a solar eclipse. Hayes cleared his throat, regaining composure, but not entirely. That's terrible, he said, amusement softening the edges of his tone. But it made me laugh, which means it's memorable. Charlie blinked, caught somewhere between pride and disbelief. The sound of that laugh. He'd heard it before. Not in this room, not in daylight, but in the quiet glow of his phone. His pulse misfired. Across the room, Hayes caught his gaze, expression unreadable. For one fleeting moment, though, his eyes warmed, like someone who'd almost been caught smiling again. And when he looked away, Charlie wasn't sure if he wanted to exhale or fall apart. The lines between day and night were starting to blur, and neither of them seemed willing or able to stop it. Chapter 3: Mixed Signals and Close Quarters. By the time the clock blinked past 8, the building was half empty. Most of the marketing floor had gone home, but Charlie and Hayes were still buried in the presentation room, surrounded by coffee cups, half-eaten pastries, and a whiteboard so crowded with scribbles it looked like a battlefield. Just one more slide, Hayes said, voice low and even. His jacket hung off the back of a chair, his tie loosened, the crisp perfection of his day slowly unraveling. We'll wrap after that. Charlie smiled faintly, exhausted but oddly content. It had been weeks since he'd stayed this late with anyone from work, and despite the stress, he liked these quiet moments. The hum of the building, the faint scent of bergamot anchoring the silence. Right, he said, tapping on his laptop. Just one more. The lights went out. The hum of the AC died. The monitors flickered black. The sudden darkness was total. Whoa, Charlie froze, blinking into the void. Hayes exhaled sharply somewhere across the room. Generator must have tripped. Stay put. There was a sound, movement, the soft scrape of a chair, and then the tiny beam of a flashlight cut through the dark. A circle of pale light landed on Hayes' face. Sharp lines softened into something almost human. Power's out across the floor, he said. Emergency lights should kick in soon. They didn't. The room stayed swallowed in shadow, except for that dim halo between them. Charlie's heartbeat felt too loud in the silence. Hayes set the flashlight on the table so it lit from below, throwing his features into a strange glow. He removed his jacket, draped it neatly over a chair, and loosened his tie completely. You okay? I think so, Charlie smiled weakly. I forgot how dramatic total darkness can be. Hayes gave a quiet huff of amusement and leaned against the table, folding his arms. I hate silence, he admitted suddenly. Makes things too loud inside my head. Charlie tilted his head. It was strange hearing something so personal from him. That's why you work until midnight.
That's why I do something until midnight. Hayes looked down, eyes thoughtful in the half-light. If I stop moving, I start remembering. The air between them shifted. Charlie didn't know what Hayes meant, and he didn't ask. He just let the quiet settle softer this time. I get that, he said quietly. I used to list things when I got overwhelmed. List things? Yeah, 5 things I can see, 4 I can touch, 3 I can hear. He trailed off, embarrassed. It's stupid. Not stupid. Hayes's voice gentled. It's grounding. They stood there for a moment, 2 silhouettes framed by the tiny flashlight's glow, surrounded by the scent of stale coffee, paper, and something deeper, black tea and pear swirling in the dark. Charlie crouched to grab his fallen pen drive, the little metallic rectangle glinting near a chair leg. Found it. Ah, he fumbled. It slept. Hayes bent at the same time. Their hands collided. For a moment, neither of them moved. Charlie's fingers were warm. Hayes's were steady, cool. Their touch was nothing, just skin, but it lingered longer than it should have. Charlie's breath caught. His dimple flashed in reflex, that shy half-smile he tried to hide. Hayes looked at him, eyes dark in the dim light, and for the first time since Charlie had known him, he didn't look composed. He looked undone. Hayes was the first to pull back. Got it, he said quietly, handing the drive over. Thanks. Charlie's voice was smaller than he meant it to be. Hayes cleared his throat. You should sit. I'll check the breaker. But he didn't move. Neither did Charlie. The silence stretched thick with the hum of something unspoken. The flashlight's beam wobbled as Charlie sat back at the table, half smiling. Okay, he said softly. Let's do the grounding thing just to fill the silence. Hayes quirked an eyebrow. Go on. Charlie closed his eyes. 5 things I can see. You, the flashlight, a stack of papers, a coffee mug, and the whiteboard. 4 things you can feel. Charlie brushed his fingers across the table edge. My sleeve, the chair, the air conditioner vent, my pulse. He opened his eyes again, faintly flustered. Your turn. Hayes looked at him for a long moment. Then his tone dropped an octave. I'll skip to sense. Charlie blinked. Sense? Yeah. Hayes's gaze was intent, the kind that pinned without pressure. Tea, bergamot, paper, rain in the vents. He hesitated. Pear. The word landed like a whisper against skin. Charlie froze. He felt it down to his stomach, the faint tremor, the way his body responded before his brain caught up. His scent spiked just slightly, honeyed and warm, curling into the dark like invitation. Hayes noticed. Of course he noticed. He stepped back immediately, deliberate, careful. You're safe, he said quietly. His voice was steady again, but softer now. I shouldn't have. It's okay, Charlie interrupted. You didn't do anything wrong. Their eyes met through the thin beam of light. Something about the moment felt suspended, like a page about to turn, but not yet willing to. Then, mercifully, the emergency lights flickered to life. They both exhaled. Later that night, back in his apartment, Charlie sat cross-legged on his bed, staring at his phone. His fingers hovered over the familiar pink app icon before he tapped it open. HD had already messaged, I can still feel your hand. Charlie's heart stuttered. Literal? It couldn't be coincidence, just a weird romantic text, he typed slowly. Metaphor or confession? A moment later. HD, you make me feel things I can't show in daylight. The breath left him. He swallowed, thumbs shaking as he wrote, maybe night is enough. He didn't know if he meant it for HD or Hayes. Maybe both. When the lights came back on at work, Hayes offered to walk him to the lobby. The elevators were still rebooting, so they took the emergency stairs. The stairwell was narrow, washed in red emergency light. Their steps echoed softly in the concrete quiet. Charlie tripped on the second landing, just a small misstep, but Hayes caught his elbow instantly, hand firm and protective. Got you, he murmured. Their faces were inches apart. Charlie looked up, breath catching. Hayes's eyes were unreadable, but his hand lingered for half a second too long. Then Hayes's jaw flexed and he released him gently. Careful, he said, voice tight. Charlie nodded, throat dry. Yeah, thanks. They stood there for a heartbeat that felt like an eternity. The air between them charged, their scents blending in the dim red light, black tea and pear, calm and trembling, too close to something neither could yet name. When they reached the ground floor, Hayes pressed the door open and stepped aside. Get home safe, Lane. Charlie hesitated, wanting to say something, anything, but the words caught behind his tongue. You too, Mr. Durnell. The door clicked softly behind him. Outside, the city lights pulsed, neon and rain-wet. Charlie inhaled, catching the faintest echo of bergamot on his sleeve, and wondered if it was possible to miss someone who'd been standing beside you just seconds ago. And somewhere high above in his penthouse, Hayes Durnell stared at his phone, at a message he hadn't yet sent, before finally typing, "Good night, trouble." He didn't hit send, not yet, but he smiled, and the silence wasn't so loud anymore. Chapter 4. The Hotel Presentation, aka Disaster Waiting to Happen. Snow began as a rumor in the sky, thin, uncommitted flakes drifting past the airport windows as Hayes and Charlie grabbed their carry-ons from the carousel. By the time their cab slid up to the Valmir Hotel, the rumor had become a vow. The driver's wipers ticked like a metronome as slush striped the glass and the city's lights blurred into watercolor. Inside, the lobby glowed in rich amber. A pianist pressed something smooth and old into the air. The floor shone like honey. A towering arrangement of white lilies perfumed the room, nearly eclipsing the subtler notes that trailed in with them. Black tea and bergamot from Hayes's skin, pear and white musk from Charlie's scarf. Together. A hint of sweet smoke rose between them and dissolved into the lilies. Hayes tugged his suitcase to a stop at the front desk, smoothing his cuff with a practiced gesture. Reservation for Dell Creative, 2 rooms under Hayes Durnell. The concierge's smile faltered. I'm so sorry, Mr. Durnell. Click, click went the keyboard, anxiety disguised as efficiency. It looks like the snowstorm diverted several flights. We've had unexpected arrivals. There's been a system error. At the moment, we have only 1 suite left on your block. Charlie blinked. There must be some mistake. We've checked the surrounding hotels, the concierge said quickly. Everything within a 5-mile radius is fully booked. We can comp room service and breakfast. Hayes's jaw worked once, a silent calculation. The presentation was at 8 a.m. sharp across the river, and the roads were already swallowing themselves in white. He shifted, broad shoulders under navy wool. We'll take the suite, he said, then turned to Charlie, voice low. I'll use the sofa, you take the bed. The words were immediate and easy, cleanly offered. No hesitation, no glance he had to look away from. Just that steady green flag, calm as if boundaries were oxygen. Charlie's mouth twitched. That's ridiculous. It's your reservation. He caught himself, lifted his eyes, and found Hayes watching him with that composed patience that always felt a little like trust. We can share, Charlie said, cheeks warming. Respectfully, I swear I don't snore. Hayes's mouth curved, the briefest mischief at the corner. Then, he looked at the concierge again, we'll take the suite. They rode the elevator in a quiet that wasn't quite silence. The digital floor numbers bloomed overhead. The carpet swallowed their footsteps. Charlie caught their reflections in the mirrored doors. Hayes, tall and meticulous, winter-bright eyes. Charlie, a half step to the side, hair damp from the snow, a flush across his cheekbones that could be blamed on the cold and nothing else. The suite was all soft wood and dim lamps, a tasteful spread of fruit and chocolates on the coffee table. A fireplace flickered behind glass. The bed was a pale ocean of linen. Hayes rested a hand on the back of the sofa and gave it an assessing bounce, as if it were a colleague he had to manage. You take the bed, he said again. I insist. And I insist we don't make this weirder by pretending one of us is a martyr. Charlie shrugged out of his coat, dropping it over a chair. We're adults. We can negotiate blanket treaties. The smallest laugh, quickly tamed. Blanket treaties. Article 1, no stealing the duvet. Article 2, no toes as heat-seeking missiles. Article 3,
All accidental cuddling must be denounced as a temporary ceasefire, not a declaration of war. This time, Hayes didn't hide the laugh. Not fully. It unfurled low and warm, and Charlie felt it like a match struck in his chest. "I'll draft an addendum," Hayes said. "Pillow demilitarized zone centerline." "Approved," Charlie grinned, and for a second, the world tilted because the grin bounced off Hayes and came back looking a little like relief. You are listening to a narrated story on the MangaLove channel. Don't forget to share your thoughts about today's story. They ordered a light dinner, ran through the deck one last time, and set their clothes out like soldiers. A tie draped over the chair back, a belt coiled, cufflinks still in their velvet cave. The storm fretted at the windows. The city softened until it was only halos and moving smudges of headlights. In the bathroom, the vanity bulbs were gentler than hotel lights had any right to be. They stood side by side with toothbrushes and an easy hush. Charlie foamed up first, then tried unsuccessfully to stifle a laugh at himself in the mirror. Mint foam made a ridiculous mustache. He flicked a towel at his own reflection, missed, and hit Hayes' shoulder instead. "Sorry," Charlie mumbled around toothpaste. "Tragic," Hayes said, eyes on Charlie's in the mirror. The boyishness that almost never surfaced at work rose like a shy animal, small and unarmored. He looked for a heartbeat like the kind of man who could lean on a kitchen island at midnight and talk for hours. They rinsed, they dried, they left streaks on the glass with their hands, and neither of them wiped them away. Back in the bedroom, they made the bed to separate sides, bantering about pillow counts like a diplomatic summit. Hayes set his phone on the nightstand, face down. Charlie did the same. The lamps dimmed, the fireplace hissed. The city's storm softened everything into a suspended hush. Minutes passed like slow, warm rain. Then Charlie reached for his phone anyway. Night Shift opened with that gentle blush-pink glow. A notification waited like a held breath. "HD, you alive in there, Trouble?" Charlie smiled before he could stop himself. His fingers moved without permission. Alive, somehow, caught in a strangely nice version of a crisis. "HD, hotel? How did you—" "Charlie, you text more carefully when you're not home, like you don't want anyone to see you smile." Across the room, Hayes lay on his back, eyes on the ceiling, phone in his palm. The blue edge of the screen washed his cheekbones and mouth in cold light. He typed, paused, deleted, tried again. The little typing bubble was a held breath between them. Neither could see. "Wish I could touch you right now." Charlie sucked a breath in, the sound too loud in the quiet room. The world shrank to the rectangle of light in his hand. He typed, heart skittering. What would you do? The air changed. Black tea rose like heat from the other side of the bed. Charlie turned his head. At the same time, Hayes turned his. The dark was soft, but not forgiving. Both of them were lit only by their phones, two small planets of glow. Charlie looked down at the words on his screen, then up at the exact same shape of glow in Hayes' hands. The profile icon he'd never clicked, the simple gray circle, reflected and doubled in Hayes' eyes. It wasn't proof. It was 1,000 tiny proofs all at once. Names clicked into place like magnets. Their phones dimmed on their own timers, sensing stillness. The screen slid toward black. "Charlie," Hayes said softly. "Hayes." Silence rolled through the room like a wave, unspooling everything that had been knotted tight. Charlie swallowed, felt the ache of wanting and the sharper ache of being wanted back. Hayes set his phone on the nightstand, face up now, as if there was nothing left to hide. "Can I please?" Charlie breathed, already shifting across the border of pillows. The first touch was their hands, as if they had to prove to themselves that they remembered. Fingers finding fingers, palm to palm. Then Hayes' thumb brushed the pulse at Charlie's wrist, gentle, reverent. He leaned in with a care that had weight, that said choice at every inch. The first kiss was slow, a hello that tasted like mint and snow and relief. The second found shape, the third found heat. Charlie's mouth softened under Hayes', then pressed back, asking for more. Hayes cupped his jaw, the elegant hand that wrote notes in margins and slid water within reach, and learned the curve of his cheekbone. The linen sighed under them.
Shirt buttons slid one and then another, the world narrowing to the bracket of shoulders and the long line of a back under cotton. They broke for breath and then forgot why. Breath hitched, eyes closed and closed again, heat building and folding back like a tide. Hayes kissed the edge of Charlie's smile, his temple, the corner of his mouth, like he'd been holding maps of these places, and finally found the country. Charlie laughed once, quiet and incredulous. Wow. Hayes pressed his forehead to Charlie's, breath warm. Tell me where the line is. Charlie shivered, body answering to a language that was more scent and warmth than words. Pear spiraled up in something like syrup, black tea mellowed into smoke. He said, voice shaking. I want all of this, and I want to be able to look you in the eyes tomorrow, no regrets. Hayes's exhale broke halfway between desire and gratitude. He kissed Charlie's wrist instead of his mouth this time, left a whisper of heat there, then pulled back an inch. Then we stop here, he said, voice rough but certain, the restraint in it tender enough to hurt. His thumb stroked once more over the place where pulse jumped. We can want without rushing it. Charlie's eyes burned. He pulled Hayes close again, not to deepen, just to be near. One hand at the back of his neck, the other splayed between his shoulder blades like a promise. You ruin me, he said, smiling, but respectfully. Occupational hazard, Hayes murmured against his hair. They ended up half under the duvet, half above it, entangled but not careless. At some point, Charlie tugged the blanket up under Hayes's chin, and Hayes smoothed it down over Charlie's hip in the same motion. A domestic choreography that felt alarmingly natural for two people who were supposed to be strictly colleagues. Their breathing steadied. The snow grabbed at the windows like curious hands. They talked in the hush between kisses.
The kind of talking that found the space under armor. No history monologues, no confessions they weren't ready to make, just a sharing of small things that tilted the room. Books that calmed them, the smell of tomatoes on a summer vine, the fact that Hayes kept his tea tins organized by mood, that Charlie owned 3 of the same sweater because it made him feel like a person who had his life together. Eventually, the conversation edged where it had to. The morning, Charlie whispered. The pitch, the us. Hayes rolled onto his back, still holding Charlie's hand between both of his. The fire ticked softly. We have to be clean about it, he said. It matters that we are, after the presentation, if you want this. He glanced down at their hands, at the messy interlacing of fingers. I'll talk to HR, full transparency. I'll ask for you to be reassigned to a different account. You'll have a say in where, no pressure either way. Charlie traced his thumb along the line of Hayes's lifeline. The proposal landed like a warm coat on shoulders left bare. You do that? I'd like to keep my job, Hayes said dryly, then softened. But more than that, I'd like you to never doubt what part of this is choice, yours and mine. The scent between them settled to that now familiar blend, sweet smoke and fruit syrup, low and steady, safe. The wanting didn't go anywhere. It just curled up beside them and decided to stay. They fell asleep like that, not quite apart and not fully together. The edge of the pillow treaty dented by 2 heads, the center line of suggestion rather than law. When the alarm chimed too early, the storm had calmed into a delicate lace across the city. Room service arrived with steel pots and steam. They drank tea in bed and shared a croissant without ceremony. And if Charlie accidentally got jam on Hayes's thumb and then wiped it off with his own, neither of them called a foul. They dressed like men who had slept well. Charlie wrestled with his tie until Hayes stepped in, wordless, and completed the knot with a neat tug. Proximity hummed. They looked at each other, and neither smiled because the smiling would start a landslide. But something soft was there in the angle of Hayes's mouth and the way Charlie stood a little taller. The Celestia offices were a cathedral of glass. Their clients arrived wrapped in winter armor, coats black, voices brisk. The pitch room was cold until Charlie spoke, their slides filled with warmth and quiet, a porcelain cup steaming on a windowsill. Ink on a love letter, hands almost touching. Words anchored images like stones in a riverbed. Luxury, Hayes said, pacing his part slow and sure. Intimacy is forgetting the world long enough to hear yourself breathe. Charlie met him on the next beat, the copy landing with a softness that wasn't timid. Celestia, steeped in quiet, poured like a secret you share with yourself. Across the table, the client leaned in. Someone sighed a little, not bored. Behind the screen of professionalism, a few heads tilted, softened, recognized something human they hadn't known they were missing. They closed on a slide that looked like morning. 2 cups on a kitchen counter, a finger's width apart. No faces, no bodies, just the suggestion of proximity, of sweetness and smoke. Silence held and then release. The client smiled with their eyes first, the mouth later. "It's beautiful," she said simply. "We've seen a dozen pitches. Yeah, this is the only one that made me want to make tea." The Q&A was sensible, the budget talk brisk. Decisions were promised, handshakes exchanged. They stepped into the hallway like men who had carried something delicate and set it down intact. The elevator doors slid shut around them, gold light closing like curtains. Alone in the mirrored box, they stood shoulder to shoulder. Hayes angled his body subtly toward Charlie, a fortress that was only half pretense.
He didn't take Charlie's hand. He didn't need to. He just let his thumb brush once against Charlie's knuckles where their hands hung close. Electric, hidden, entire. Charlie's breath hitched minutely, and in the reflection he saw his own mouth curve. He kept his eyes front, and so did Hayes, the picture of calm men who had always been this calm. The elevator sighed open. On the ground floor, the world was both ordinary and new. Outside, the city wore its thin shawl of snow, and inside, their phones sat in their pockets like 2 bright secrets that had finally learned each other's names. They walked to the revolving doors and paused because someone else needed to exit first. Hayes leaned in just enough for Charlie to hear the low band of his voice. "Dinner tonight," he said, not a question. "If you want it, after I talk to HR." Charlie didn't look up, didn't need to. "Tell me where to meet you," he said softly, the words doing a lot of work for being so small. "I'll be there." They stepped out into the light at the same time, and for a heartbeat, the world smelled exactly like black tea and pear, sweet and steady, the storm behind them, and a clean street ahead. Chapter 5. The morning after the match. The first Monday after the pitch felt like new air in old rooms. The office hummed at its usual frequency. Printers, heels on tile, a stray laugh ricocheting down the corridor. But for once, Hayes didn't stand at the center of it, holding everything together with severity alone. He moved with the same precision, wore the same navy that behaved like armor, but something in his posture had loosened, a knot untied in private. He'd promised Charlie transparency. He kept his promises like he kept deadlines. He stopped by Charlie's desk without the stealth he usually favored. 10 minutes? He asked, quiet, not secret. HR? Charlie's stomach fluttered. This was the part where intentions learned to walk in daylight. They met outside the glass-walled conference room at the end of the hall. The HR director, Alina, kind, competent, famous for color-coded spreadsheets, opened the door with a nod. She'd already set out 3 mugs and a pitcher of water, the small warmths that kept conversations human. "Thanks for making time," Hayes said, taking the chair across from her and leaving the one beside him vacant until Charlie sat. He waited for Charlie to settle before he continued. "I asked for this meeting." Alina folded her hands. "Go on." Hayes didn't fidget. He never fidgeted, but something like it twitched under his skin, then smoothed. "There's a personal relationship developing between myself and an employee, Charlie Lane," he said. He used Charlie's full name like a safeguard, a sign that this wasn't a wink in a hallway. "I want to proactively remove any conflict of interest. I'm requesting a temporary reassignment for him off the Celestia account and any accounts where I'm listed as final sign-off effective immediately. If he wants that," he added, tone dropping softer, turning to Charlie, "it's his call." Alina looked from one to the other, measuring the space between them, not with suspicion, but with the responsibility of someone who'd seen messes arise from the absence of these conversations. "It's what I want," Charlie said, and found as he spoke that the words strengthened themselves. "I want to keep working here. I want to do that with clear lines." His pulse hummed, but it felt like relief, not fear. "I'd prefer a different account, preferably outside Hayes's reporting chain." "Good," Alina said. She took a few notes. "We'll put you on the Aston Home account. It's short-staffed and needs strong copy. You'll report to Priya, not Hayes. No one-on-one meetings without another manager present for the duration of the transition. If you're both comfortable, I'll document a disclosure acknowledging a consensual relationship and the guardrails we've discussed." No performance evaluations by Hayes, no direct approvals, no schedule favors, no travel together for work unless a third staffer's assigned. You'll both sign. Questions? Hayes nodded. "I'd also like to recuse myself from any promotion or comp review regarding Charlie." "Already noted," Alina said, almost smiling. "You really do read policy." "He color codes his own life," Charlie muttered, then flushed when the joke slipped free. Alina laughed, short and kind. "I appreciate you both coming in first," she said, rising. "This is how it should be done." They signed. The printer hiccuped out copies that smelled faintly of warm toner. When it was finished, Hayes slid Charlie's copy toward him with the same neat precision he used to slide him a glass of water in tense meetings. The motion wasn't possessive. It was protective of the space they were making around themselves. In the hallway afterward, they didn't touch. They didn't even linger. They stood a respectful foot apart and looked at each other like a future had breathed in and didn't plan to exhale. "Dinner," Hayes said softly. "When you want. Not tonight if you're wiped, or tonight if you're not." "Tonight," Charlie said, surprising himself with how sure it felt. "I want tonight." "Good," Hayes said, a small private smile that felt like a door opening. Eight. The day moved on, full of an ordinary that had learned how to hold something extraordinary without spilling it. Priya looped Charlie in on Aston Home. The intern team left him a congratulatory sticky note that said, "We love you, even if you left us for kitchen faucets." He laughed, tucked it into his notebook, and felt the day settle into place like a picture frame finally hung straight. At 7:53, he stood outside Hayes's building with a bag of lemons balanced in one hand, because he suddenly couldn't arrive empty-handed. And lemons felt like an apology and a promise, bright, clean, useful. The doorman tipped his cap when Hayes entered the lobby, sleeves rolled, collar open, and Oxford gone soft with many careful washes. "Hi," Hayes said, as if the word could be a careful place to set two hearts down. "Hi," Charlie said, then held up the lemons. "I panicked and bought citrus." "I panicked and bought tea," Hayes admitted, lifting a paper bag. "So between us, we can make marmalade and regret nothing." Hayes's apartment was all dark wood, quiet art, and the stubborn warmth of books. The windows gathered the city's dusk. The skyline leaned in like a benign conspiracy. Tea candles flickered on the console, on the coffee table, on the kitchen island. A record player let vinyl crackle into the room, thin and nostalgic. It smelled like bergamot in bloom. Charlie set his sweater on the back of a chair and tried not to stare at how the domestic light treated Hayes, how it softened his jaw and sharpened his mouth, how it found the laugh lines he didn't let the office see. He tugged his own cream sweater back into place and felt foolishly like he dressed correctly without knowing the dress code. Soft, human him. "Hungry?" Hayes asked, already at the stove. "Or should I pretend I can cook and let you rescue me at the last second?" "I'm an excellent rescuer," Charlie said. "Tragic that no one believes me because I look like I'd apologize to a potted plant." "You would apologize to a potted plant." "It's not the plant's fault," Charlie said primly, sidling up to the island to peer into the skillet. "What are we making?" "Pasta, a sauce that aspires to be sophisticated, and will be rescued by your lemons." They moved around the kitchen like they'd been practicing in their sleep, passing knives hilt first, avoiding elbows, laughing at nothing. Hayes zested, Charlie stirred, music threaded between their sentences. The steam bloomed bergamot when Hayes leaned too close to the kettle. Pear warmth curled up from Charlie's collar when he laughed. The apartment became their private weather. "Taste this," Hayes said, finally, lifting a spoon toward Charlie. Charlie leaned in. Hayes didn't feed him with the spoon. He lifted a finger, dipped it into the sauce, and touched it lightly to Charlie's lower lip. The air changed. Charlie closed his mouth around Hayes's fingertip, the barest pressure, a pause that was more inhale than act. Heat licked through him with embarrassing speed. He let go a second later, eyes fluttering open. "Need salt," he said, voice a little afraid. "Agreed," Hayes said hoarsely, and neither of them reached for the salt. They reached for each other. The first kiss found them at the island's corner, map already in their hands from a week of wanting. It was unhurried and precise, the way only hungry things that had learned restraint could be. Charlie's mouth opened on a soft sound. Hayes answered like he'd wanted to all week and been holding the edge of it with careful teeth. They broke to breathe forehead to forehead. The record hissed between tracks. A tea candle pocked like a tiny sapling in the fireplace. Neither of them moved away. "Before we go further," Hayes said, voice quiet but steady, "I need to say something about the app." Charlie nodded, breathing slowing. "Okay." "For a long time, the work and the person were at odds," Hayes said. "The app let me be a version of myself who wasn't Mr. Durnall. He could say soft things. He could ask. He could laugh first. I didn't know how to put both men in daylight." He swallowed. "I want to learn with you, not to split the difference, but to be whole." Charlie felt the confession like a spoon tapping his rib cage, hollow, changed to tone. "I fell for both," he said. "The man who edits copy like an art restorer, careful, ruthless, generous. And the voice in the dark that asked, not took. I want all of you, and I want to be asked every time, because that's the part of you I love most." Hayes's mouth softened. "We will never rush," he said. "We will always choose." "Always," Charlie echoed. They kissed again, and this one didn't ask a question so much as answer one. Hayes's hands from Charlie's hips, and then his back, large and warm and not possessive, anchoring. Charlie rose onto his toes, arms looped behind Hayes's neck, and felt the moment they both smiled into it, because of course they did. The trail of it moved from the island to the couch in a meandering line of small accidents. Someone knocked a lemon onto the floor, and they both bent at once and laughed. Someone's shirt hem got caught on a drawer pull and had to be smoothed free by careful hands. They didn't rip anything, they didn't crash. They undid buttons the way you unfasten something borrowed and beloved. Against the couch, the kisses deepened, open-mouthed and breathy, an exploration more than a conquest. Charlie's hands slid under the rolled sleeves of Hayes's Oxford, greedy for skin. Hayes arched into him on a soft, involuntary sound that made Charlie go faint with wanting. The pair in the air turned syrup thick. The black tea curled to smoke. The room dimmed to lamplight on skin and the slip of fabric from shoulders. Someone's watch beeped. They broke off laughing, and then didn't, because once you start laughing like that, you have to place a kiss somewhere to save your life. "Doorway," Hayes said suddenly, voice roughened. He rose, pulling Charlie with him by the hand, but stopped 2 steps later with his palm flat on the doorframe, body curving to make a space that was invitation, not trap. "Yes, yes," Charlie said at once, the word bright and steady. "Yes to this, yes to you." They went no further than the promise needed. The narrative of what followed could be told by the geography it left behind. 2 shirts, half untucked and then half off. A sweater slumped over the arm of a chair like it had fainted from joy. A trail of buttons that would be meticulously counted later to make sure none had run away. There were hands and hair and, along ribs, soft sounds that rose and fell as if they'd practiced breathing together for weeks without knowing. There was a pause to check. Still good. Still yes. And the warmth of yes itself filling the room. When the tide of it ebbed, they were wrapped in a throw on the couch, the pasta stone cold on the stove and the tea unpoured. Breathing slowed until it synchronized. The record had to nudge with a fingertip to keep the music from looping the same faded second. Hayes pressed his nose to Charlie's hair and inhaled like this was the first air he'd believed in. "You okay?" he murmured, the question that had built every step toward here. "I'm great," Charlie said, then laughed at himself. which is a stupid word, but I can't think of a better one because you kissed the vocabulary out of me. We'll find it later, Hayes said. I have a thesaurus and a willingness to misuse it. They dozed like that a while. When they woke, the tea had cooled and the city had turned its lights down to night simmer. Hayes poured anyway. Bergamot steamed faintly back to life. Charlie sat curled with his feet under him, hair mussed, the throw a small kingdom across his knees. Hayes took the armchair like a man pretending he didn't want to drag it closer, and then did, inch by inch, until they could have shared the same breath if they'd leaned. Hayes's phone buzzed. He looked at it, then at Charlie, then back at his phone. He typed. Charlie's own phone buzzed on the coffee table. He picked it up to see the message glimmering on the screen. HD, hey, still want a match? Charlie's smile tugged crooked. He didn't have to type. He wanted to say it aloud, to put it into the room where it would learn how to stay. You had me at hello, boss, he said, the last word more teased than title, more kiss than rank. They set their phones down side by side, glowing like two small hearths. The notifications pulsed, two heartbeats learning to keep time.
Weeks folded themselves neatly. Aston Home loved Charlie's first pass. Priya sent back edits with a compliment disguised as a question mark. The Celestia campaign landed so well, the client fast-tracked media buys. In the office, nothing dramatic happened. No whispered scenes, no suspicious glances that mattered. Everyone was busy surviving their own deadlines. The guardrails held. The world did not end when two people followed the rules and their own hearts at the same time. When the award season came, it came like a laugh, unexpected and weirdly obvious. Celestia won for copy and concept. The event was held on a terrace with heaters glowing like moons and a skyline that behaved as if it were posing for a proposal. The whole team showed. Someone spilled champagne on the carpet and tried to rub it in with their shoe while apologizing to the decor. Charlie stood in the audience, not at Hayes' elbow, but not far, in a dark suit that made his eyes impossible to look away from. When their campaign was called, he clapped, like he was clapping for a friend whose good fortune confirmed something kind about the universe. After the speeches and the photos, after the handshake gauntlet and the sincere-to-a-fault compliments, Charlie slipped away to the quieter edge of the terrace. The city breathed below, wide and patient. The evening air teased at pear and black tea as if the wind had learned their names. Footsteps approached but didn't crowd. Hayes stopped beside him, not quite touching, the space between them the exact width of a choice. Congratulations, Hayes said. And it meant us, not me. You did beautiful work. So did you, Charlie said. And you look like someone who's been taught how to smile without considering legal ramifications. I've had an excellent tutor. They stood with their shoulders framed by the city's dark silver. For a long moment, they just watched the lights translate distance into something tender. No cameras found them.
No colleagues interrupted. The night placed a palm over their small corner, and the heaters made it feel like early spring. Daylight's not a problem anymore, Charlie said, the words arriving from somewhere past his fear. Good, Hayes said, and reached, finally, sensibly, to take Charlie's hand. He didn't squeeze like a claim. He held like a vow. I plan to love you in every hour. The words could have been ridiculous in a lesser mouth, under a lesser sky. Here, they fit. Charlie's fingers tightened back, the grip of someone who knew the difference between an oath and a pretty line. Below them, cars stitched brightness through the streets. Above them, the city kept its steady blink. Between these two tempos, tea and pear drifted into the cool air, settled like a signature, and stayed. Thank you for listening to MangaLove's storytelling. If you find the story meaningful and enjoyable, please remember to give MangaLove a like and subscribe so you won't miss the newest stories. Wishing you a wonderful day.